Let's go, Mackenzie. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Veltria Roman from the Laguna Playhouse. I just want to thank you all for being with us tonight for this Elliot and Me Talkback with the cast and crew of the show, Elliot and Me. I apologize. I think I just had a little feedback from the live. That is technology for you. So I'm going to get started by introducing Steve Walensky. Forgive me if I mispronounced your name. Steve is one of the writers of the show, and I'll let him tell you more about his role in bringing Elliot and Me to life.
So I'm the me in Elliot and Me. Elliot Walensky was my brother, who was a songwriter, and the show is about our relationship. And I'm going to introduce my co-writer, Scott Coulter, who actually brought this story to life. He took my random stories about my relationship with Elliot and our family, and actually gave us a show with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Scott?
Hi. First of all, it's so great to be here. I'm thrilled that Laguna Playhouse is presenting this presentation because the actors did such a phenomenal job, and I'm glad people are getting to see it. So Steve wrote me years ago. He was looking to turn the music of his brother into some sort of theatrical piece. And we tossed around a couple of ideas. Maybe it was a musical review. Maybe it was a full production. The original production of Elliot and Me had, I think, 8 actors in it. And so we whittled it down to just 2 people because it really is a story just about 2 brothers who were as different as night and day, as opposite as black and white, the 2 keys on a piano, which is where music comes from. So we tried to focus on what exactly, how these 2 complete polar opposites form such a loving life enhancing union. And the key to it, once we found sort of the way in, or at least started to find the way, I look forward to where this is going to go. But once we started to find the way in, the key was how to present the music, because Elliot wrote pop music, which is great pop music, but how to make that theatrical, how to make that serve the story. So I have for many years worked with an incredible composer, songwriter, singer, performer, award-winning in all of those fields, young man named Michael Holland, who did the orchestrations for the most recent revival of Godspell on Broadway. I mean, he knows what to do with a pop song. So I called him and I said, would you be interested in helping shape and tell this story? And he said yes, and it's his work that you hear, and that's his cute little face you see there with the hat and the keyboard. Hi, Michael.
Hi, sorry, my internet's kicking in and out. I heard some of that and it sounded really nice. Yeah, I got called in to work on a quick workshop of this show when there were 800 actors in it. And it was a really like quick and dirty kind of like let the actors read the script and then Michael, you just sing and play the songs. And so I just started playing around with different styles and so forth. And then when I was called back in to work on the 2-person version, I thought, well, one way to these songs are so melodic and they're such great pop songs. And a lot of them feel like they want to be with a full band or an orchestra. So how do we accomplish that? We make the actors sing every note ever written. So these 2 guys, Eric and Drew, just like jumped on it, and they're nice to my virtual face. I've never met them in person, but they might have hated me when they got the charts. But there's so many different colors to these songs, and the musicality is just so wide ranging that we really wanted it's almost naturally theatrical to my ear. So that part wasn't difficult at all. What I don't have is I have the ear, but I don't have the eye. I don't have the vision. I can never picture how any of this is going to work out. And I didn't until I saw this presentation, which was so well directed. And I'm going to pass this over so you can get a little bit of perspective on how that works. And I'm actually meeting Michael for the first time. The director of the production is Michael Bias.
Hi. Yeah, so I came to this about a year and a half ago, right before COVID hit. And we were originally supposed to do a staged reading of this. And then the next step was to do a production. And then everything got shut down. And we sat and we went back and forth. Are we going to wait? What are we going to do with this? And Steve came up with the idea. He said, well, why don't we try doing a Zoom production of this, or, you know, some kind of video of this, which was a great idea. However, we couldn't rehearse in person. And so we rehearsed this entire show on a platform called Jam Kazam. And we were talking about it a little bit earlier, but we would go for like half hour, 40 minutes, and then all of a sudden one of the actors would be like this. And we'd have to sign out and we'd have to go back in. And it was really kind of crazy. And I didn't meet the actors. I mean, we had casting sessions and such, but all on Zoom. This was all over the computer. And I didn't meet the actors in person until we went into the theater 3 days before we were going to start shooting. And the two of them were walking down the block. I'll never forget this. And from behind me, and it's winter, it's cold, and they're all bundled up and they go, Michael, how are you? And I turned around and I didn't know who they were. I didn't recognize them. You know, I hadn't met them before. So needless to say, it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. Something brand new. I mean, it's amazing how we can create art in a time where it seems like you can't create art. And then I gave Vicky Casella a call. Vicky's our musical director. I've worked with Vicky for years and years and years. And when Steve called me, he said, well, do you have a musical director? He had somebody. I said, well, I'd love to work with Vicky. And and she just did wonders with the score and such. So Vicky, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, thanks, Michael.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say that this music kind of sang my youth. You know, there was something so cool about revisiting the 70s, and of course, Elliot's music was just so melodic and beautiful. So fun to work on. Michael Holland's arrangements were a dream to play. You know, just absolutely lovely. And then we had these incredible actors that just, you know, kind of took the ball and ran with it. So that was all really wonderful. It was very challenging rehearsing the show, you know, particularly for music. You know, I mean, Jam Kazam, we used Jam Kazam because it was better than Zoom, but it was a little better than Zoom, but not a lot. So it was definitely challenging for all of us. So when we actually were in the same room, I felt like that's when things kind of really sort of took off. And when we could connect, which of course we always do in a theatrical situation, when we are in the same room and we're collaborating, that's kind of when the magic happens. And that's exactly, I mean, it was just in a very, very short amount of time, but that's exactly what happened. And so I, you know, without further ado, I will introduce one of our fabulous actors, Eric Brierly, who played Elliot.
Thank you, Vicky, and thank you everyone else. Michael Holland, to your point, your arrangements at first were a bit tricky, in so much as over Jam Kazam, I was like, I don't know how this is gonna work. It's so hard to figure out, hear the songs and hear what Vicky's playing and sing to it. But once we got into the space, it was pretty. It made it, you know, all much easier because you're in person. But going back to the rehearsal process, it was so choppy at times with the Jam Kazam that Drew, who I played opposite of, who is who is Stephen, we got on our own Zoom meetings, and I recorded us speaking through the lines, and then I piecemealed the show together for us so that we would have a cohesive piece to listen to. And I would take the songs that we would record during. I'm getting some feedback. Sorry. Hope that's okay. Yeah, I would take the songs that we record during rehearsal and I would add them in and just simple putting it into GarageBand. And that's how I would just listen to it over and over again. And that's how I went through the learning of it prior to getting into the space over at Hudson Theater Works in Weehawken, New Jersey, where we filmed. And once we got there, that again, everything just happened so quickly. And if you've ever worked in theater for any amount of time, you realize you get to a point in the rehearsal process where you go, I don't know how we're going to do this. Like, this is no way that it's going to get done. And somehow it does. And that is the beauty and magic of theater. And I, of course, would not have been able to do any of what I did without the amazing feedback I got from Drew, who I will introduce now, and he can share with you some of the challenges that he had through the process. So without further ado, here's Drew.
This is part of the challenges because I actually got laryngitis right before we got into the room. So here I am. It's a two-person show. We're going to be in harmony. I'm so excited. The whole time we've done a great job on Jam Kazam, minus all the technical difficulties, but I can't even speak at all. And so poor Eric is going through the entire script without a scene partner, basically, besides me going, like, mouthing my words or telling him, like, you know, whatever it is, like, give him monkey gestures, whatever it might be. It's like, it's just so crazy, but like how hard that was. But also it informed me as an actor because I couldn't speak. So it was all gestures, everything I wanted to get across. The stage manager would actually speak my lines as I was about to say whatever the script was. So that was a challenge among all the other challenges of only having 3 days before the filming. So we knew we had a lot to pull off here. Luckily, my voice came back the night before we started actually filming. But for me too, when we started filming, some of the things we actually caught were possibly the first time I actually did it live in the space using my actual voice. So comes with that is some great improvisational feelings and emotions, but some of it is like, I wish I could have re-looked at that moment again, but all in all, I think we were really ecstatic and thrilled that we actually pulled the whole operation off. And it was just so lovely to work with Victoria and Michael and Eric, and they made it so easy, and they were so accommodating, and Hudson Theater Works was so accommodating to my situation that we all made it work, and I'm just excited to be a part of the whole process.
Well, thank you all for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. Wow, you guys went through a lot to really make this come together. Steve and Scott, someone mentioned earlier that this is a different iteration of the script that originally had 8 people in it, dwindled down to this story with just the 2 brothers, the 2 characters. And I understand it took 10 years to get to this point. Tell us a little bit about the different versions of the show that have existed and how you decided to bring this one to life.
Do you want to
start, Scott, and then you pick it up?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll start. So back in 2009, my brother Elliot actually came to our house in the spring for a visit, and I sat him down and said, we'd always joked about doing a 2-man show together. And I sat him down and I showed him the outline of a show, and he starts looking at it and he says, this is pretty good, except, we can't do this. He says, my ex-girlfriends will kill me if we ever told some of these stories. And so after that weekend, we decided we were actually going to start working on a 2-man show. Tragically, a year later, he passed away from a stroke. And about 6 months after that, I found an email on his computer that he had drafted the night of his stroke about another idea he had for the show. And I looked at my wife and I said, I'm going to do this show. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. So the very, very first version, I told some stories about our family. I hired some singers to sing some of the songs. And we had a really dear friend who at the time was the president of Touchstone Television. And he said, there's something about this story of brothers. And not the way you did it. Go get yourself a professional writer and who can take these random stories that you told about your family and your relationship with your brother and turn it into a real show. And that's when I met Scott. And so Scott, you, how many iterations of the show did you write?
Oh, several. The first one, I'm sort of partial to the first one that we did. When I first started working with Steve, I saw the video of the performance that he was talking about. He did a concert, a tribute to Elliot, and sang the song. Stephen played the piano, singer sang, Stephen told the stories. It was lovely. It was beautiful. And then we started talking a lot about their relationship. And he told me that when Elliot had the stroke and was in the hospital for that period of time before he passed away, they played his music on a constant loop and in the room to try to reach him. And people would come into the room and say, oh my gosh, I love this song. Nurses would say, I love this song. Or doctors would say, that's a song from my youth. And Stephen would say, he wrote that. My brother wrote that. That's his song. So to me, that was the way into the story. So the first version started with Elliot singing Living My Dream. And he's singing it, full concert production, just Elliot's going to town. And halfway through, he starts repeating the same line over and over. And the bass beat, that dum, ba-dum, ba-dum of the bass becomes like the beep, 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 beep of a hospital machine. So the whole show takes place in the hospital room. As his mother comes to visit him, as Stephen comes to visit him, as his father comes to visit him, all through this music. And at the end, and there was a series, there were a series of phone calls because throughout the relationship, Elliot, they had a great brother relationship, but Elliot really depended on Stephen a lot and was not shy about picking up the phone and asking for what he needed. So that was sort of woven throughout this thing. He would call on different devices, depending on the time it was, a rotary phone or a cell phone, or at the very end, he calls just spiritually to him and says, I need your help one final time. Can you help me out of this jam? And I thought that version was really powerful. And the reason we changed from that is because it did have a larger cast of characters. And so the brother story was getting a little bit lost. And to be quite honest, it's easier to get shows produced if they have a smaller cast. So that had a big part to play in it. So, a two-hander, and if the guys can even play the instruments is even better. So we were thinking how to make this story work, just taking it down to the bare, facts of the story.
So Veltria, one of our dreams was to have Laguna Playhouse put it up live in front of the audience, which is still one of my dreams.
Well, I was going to ask, bringing this to life during COVID on video, of course, you've already talked about the different difficulties, but what type of life would you all like to see this show have post-COVID when we're all back in the seats in the theater?
Can you guys still hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, because my screen is blank. Something's happening at my house, but maybe it's Elliot. It would be just like him. One thing I would like to do, one thing we haven't had the luxury of with this show yet, in any iteration, is to have an actual working of it, a workshop of it. Like we've not all been in the same room with actors and music directors and writers and sort of seeing what works and what might need to be tweaked or what might need to be expanded or what could be cut. So I think that would be a great luxury. And that was the original plan for the Hudson Theater Works production before COVID hit. And so someday I think that would be really swell to just sort of get a real go at, working it, which we haven't been able to do yet.
Yeah, the interesting thing though is that a lot of people have seen this video now around the country and around the world actually, and the audience feedback's been phenomenal. So I think the audience really love it. Michael, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I would love to see it on stage for one major reason. I don't know if everybody realized or noticed this. This is about two brothers who, because of the way we shot this, and we had to shoot this the way under COVID rules, they don't touch.
Mm.
They don't. I had to stage it in a way that they don't touch, and for me, that feels so artificial. You know, they have to be able, and that's why I would love to see it, you know, played in front of an audience. The physicality of it all, you know.
Yeah, going back to that, there is one moment in the show where we actually touch. We cross each other and we give each other a little slap on the back. And that was a big conversation. Like, are we allowed to do that? Are we not allowed to do that? And yeah, I would love to see this workshopped. You know, there's just so many beautiful moments of the show. Stephen, I know that you said that you've already started working out different changes that you would like to make. And I think when you get that collaborative nature of everyone together, like Scott was saying, you know, there is just that magic that happens where, you know, it's the beauty of creativity just sparks to life in that atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Eric and Drew, what was it like doing a stage play with no audience?
At points, it became a little bit awkward because you're kind of like, and here's the joke. It's like, and there's no one who's responding. So I'm going to act like everyone loved that, and we're going to move on. You know, so we had to kind of act like there was a laugh reel, and just imagine there was an audience to kind of get that energy. But at points, and because we do a couple takes at a time, you start losing your energy at points, and you're realizing, oh wait, this would be like the audience would be a very immediate feedback. So it provided some challenges along the way. But I like Michael said, once we could actually have a real production where we could get closer and actually have an audience to give us feedback would be so helpful. In fact, we used to do this little sign for COVID when we got too close. We thought we'd put a little C, well, for you guys, C,
yeah.
COVID, in case we were getting too close. But this is pre-vaccinations too, so we had to be very careful. And they had, you know, all the hand sanitizers around, and it was our dressing rooms were completely on the opposite side of the theater. It was really weird to be in an isolated situation like that where I had a room, but my only other partner was across the entire theater. So it was very much when they called places, we come together into this one moment, and in some ways felt like an improv, comedy improv at points. But it was really interesting. What were we
doing it with that. Sorry, Stephen. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that we actually made a conscious decision not to put canned laughter or canned applause into the video. So the people that are going to watch this, you know, there are some show-stopping numbers in Elliot and me that would probably get a standing ovation from an audience, but you don't even hear the applause. And there are some really, really, really funny lines. And there's you know, I grew up in a Jewish household, and my parents, when they didn't want us to know what was going on, they'd speak in Yiddish. Well, as it turns out, that we had a couple of lines sprinkled in Yiddish, but we actually had written a paragraph that was totally in Yiddish, just to have. But it was, you know, the original intent was to have mostly English and a little Yiddish corrected. Well, Drew played Perchik in Joel Gray's version of Fiddler on the Roof, the Yiddish version on Broadway. And he rattled off that paragraph. I said, "Where'd you learn how to speak Yiddish?" It was amazing. And so all these things that would have gotten these huge audience reactions never happened because there was no audience in the theater.
Yeah, that made it challenging. Although since Drew lost his voice, for me, you know, it was like seeing it for the first time.
Right. It probably made you almost want to laugh too. You're like,
It did.
We have a question from our live YouTube audience. Christina Drago asks, could you please talk about some of the pop songs that Elliot wrote for Michael Jackson and Whitney and what they might have meant to him?
Yeah. So Elliot's first huge hit was a song called Gotta Be There. That was Michael Jackson's first solo single. And in the show, you'll get to hear the story of how the song was written and how it actually got on Michael Jackson's, got him to record the song. He actually had two other pretty big songs with Michael Jackson, a song called Dear Michael and a song called We've Got Forever. And both of those songs are in the show also. And so, and the interesting thing is Michael Holland, for the We've Got Forever, he wrote it not as a pop song, he wrote it as a gospel song. And the arrangement is just phenomenal. And here's another example that, when people watch the video, if we were there with a live audience, the two actors would have been out in the audience and everybody would have been clapping and it'd been like a church revival. So we lost some of that magic. And for Whitney Houston, he wrote the song called If You Say My Eyes Are Beautiful, which is on her Greatest Hits album. And the song was voted by People Magazine as one of the top 10 wedding songs of the 90s. And it was also the theme song of several characters on As the World Turns. So, the song actually had a huge following, and she used to sing it all the time in her concerts.
I watched the show several times, so I noticed that there were also a lot of themes that were, or at least things that stood out to me about maybe the definition of success and the difference in the definition of success between these two brothers, between you and Elliot. I'm wondering if that was meant to stand out in the show and how important that was to you to bring that to light as you were writing.
Yeah, I think Scott did a great job. And why don't you talk about that, Scott?
Well, I was just struck by the story of these two brothers. They're both incredibly musically talented. And one of them had a musical career because the other one helped him have a musical career, which is not often the story that gets told. Elliot made a lot of money and he lost a lot of money. And Stephen was always there to sort of help him through, which he's the hero of the story, both the real life story and the fact that this is getting made. I mean, once again, he is heeding the call that his brother has put out into the universe to get this out there, and it's a success because of Stephen. Even though Elliot was the one putting in the musical work. So I found that very interesting. I'm a musician myself, and I have a younger brother who doesn't bail me out, but I'm very aware of the choices that you make in life that take you down a certain path. And while there are no guarantees, those choices do oftentimes lead to an outcome that you could sort of foresee. And I think the way that Stephen was always there for Elliot is really, it's a shining example of brotherly love. We should all be so lucky to have a brother like that, who you can pick up the phone at any time and call with any problem, and not only feel better, but have it taken care of. And so, I mean, I think that's something that we all relate to, whether we have it or whether we want it. And the definition of success is really, it's in here. Success is in here. It's not out there. And Stephen knows that. And Elliot, I think, never really learned that. So I'm glad that you picked up on that. I think that's an important part of it.
Eric and Drew, I believe the brothers are 10 years apart. Is that okay? So the brothers are 10 years apart. How do you think that affected their relationship?
Well, funny enough, I believe it's exactly 11. and Drew and I are 11 years apart in age as well, which is just kind of crazy.
It was brilliant casting.
I think it just the age difference enabled, I think, Stephen to see Elliot as an adult before he was an adult. And there's this, and the shift that happens from Stephen growing up, and then all of a sudden taking more of the older brother role. I think that's a huge shift for someone to make. And obviously Stephen can speak to that directly. But I think that age difference really plays into it in that aspect of the show. Do you have anything to add, Drew?
I mean, you've said some great things there. Just how, Stephen seems to look up to Elliot as the big brother, always, really. He will always be the big brother, and he will always see him as this kind of bigger than life, bigger than anything, the most charismatic person in a room. But he kind of never grew up either. He says, "Your brother, you're like Peter Pan." You never. And Stephen somehow matured quicker, or had the path in his life that was not with music, that made him more the traditional 9 to 5. And I mean, I don't want to speak for you, Stephen, you're in the room, but yeah, the age thing is interesting. He's always the older brother's. Elliot will always be Stephen's older brother, but when Stephen matures way quicker, the dynamic changes. I think that shift is really important, and I think that really is what makes the show so compelling. Their relationship, how it morphs from me idolizing him to me telling him what he needs to do to get his act together, get a grip, as he says a lot of times in the show. But you never can outgrow your older brother, no matter what. So
yeah, without giving away too much to your audience about what's going to happen, Stephen actually has a realization about his life toward the end of the show, and it really is very interesting to watch this very conservative, which is what I am, not conservative in terms of politics, but conservative in terms of lifestyle, whatever, and being somebody who was in business and whatever, and could never relate to Elliot's freewheeling lifestyle as a musician and a songwriter. All of a sudden, I'm writing a show. All of a sudden, I'm now writing a show, trying to pitch it to the Laguna Playhouse to put on. So it's very interesting to see that shift that happens in me, and it happened in real life. It just doesn't happen in the show. It actually happened in real life.
Yeah, and like you said, Stephen, without giving too much away, there's a very specific moment that you actually talk about with Elliot when you say, "Well, you were gone. You never came back."
Yeah.
And the reasons why and how that affected you. I think that also had a major part to play.
Yeah.
And you know what? That line, my little brother said that to me. That's where that line actually came from.
Oh.
Wow.
When I was talking about, growing up in Nashville, and I said, and then I remember the day that you and Mom drove me to school, and you gave me that nice letter, and you dropped me off, and my brother said, "Yeah, and you never came back." And I said, "Well, of course I did." He said, "No, you never lived here ever again," which was true, which was like a jarring moment, but that was a younger brother. He had a different perspective and a different life story. And I will say one thing back to the whole idea of success, and I guess the age difference too. When we first started putting this together, I said to Stephen that I thought the pivotal song of the show was "If You Say My Eyes Are Beautiful." First of all, I love that song. It was like, that was my peak, like the 80s and the 90s was my time. Whitney was my girl. And so I said, but I think it should be sung between the two brothers. He was like, "Really? A love song?" And I said, "No, that's what he's saying. If you say my eyes are beautiful, it's because they're looking at you, brother. And if you could only see yourself, you'd see the same thing too." So that was sort of the whole story right there. And in the, yeah, I think I think that's the moment I really just want to sort of fine tune and sort of have that land perfectly, because I really think that sort of sums everything up. It's all about the way you see the people in your life versus how they see themselves, and which can be both beautiful and heartbreaking.
Let's pivot a little bit and talk about casting. Now, this show, you guys were doing a reading or planning to do a reading just when COVID was hit, right? Just before all the shutdowns. Were Eric and Drew in the show at that point, or did you cast them after? And if you casted them after, Michael, Victoria, I assume you had some part in that as well. How was it casting virtually?
Yeah, they were not in the show originally for the reading. And I guess, what was it, Steve, about 3 or 4 months went by before we decided we were going to try to do this, to do it in some fashion. So we hired, Hudson Theater Works hired a casting director, Judy Bowman, who was fabulous. And we sat, and she sent us videotapes. I guess all the actors had to submit a videotape, which I think is, like, personally put an incredible burden on actors. You know, now they not only have to act, but they have to produce and direct their own videotapes. It's crazy, but they did, and we saw, I don't know, Vicki, perhaps about 40 people, 50 people in that area there.
Yep.
And it went on for about a week, and it's interesting because when Drew first auditioned, he was auditioning for the part that Eric was playing. They were both in that same category, you know, auditioning for Elliot, and because their vocal ranges and such. But then Vicki and I wanted both of them, so we figured it out. Vicki, do you want to say anything more about the process? It was really interesting.
It was interesting because, I mean, obviously when you're casting something in the room, you know, and somebody has a certain energy when they come in, and, you know, sometimes you can just say, that's the person, you know, or whatever. We didn't have that luxury to have somebody walk in a room. So, you know, already you're kind of taking away, you're sort of, there's a step removed when it's a self-tape. And especially for a theatrical performance. Obviously, if it's a film or TV audition, that's a different situation. But for a theatrical production, it's much more challenging. And then sometimes we looked at someone's picture and their resume and thought, oh, okay, well, that's an Elliot, you know. And then when we saw their self-tape, no, they're not an Elliot. No, they're, you know, they're a Stephen. It's just, so it was really, that was an interesting process, you know, but we obviously, someone who was going to play Elliot needed the gravitas, needed, you know, the that very, very powerful, strong personality. And Stephen is, you know, equally strong, but just in, you know, a different way. He's the younger brother. He's the dynamic. So, you know, it became rather clear that where the guys kind of fit and how they were going to look together, and, you know, so it was just, yeah.
And there was one other challenge. There was one other challenge, is that the actor Drew had to also play my mother, and that was
right.
and your audience is just gonna love his portrayal of my mother. My mother wouldn't have liked it, but he did a great job.
I want to add on to what Vicki said about the energy of an actor walking into a room. The other thing is, certainly for a stage piece, we didn't get a chance to see them interact with each other.
Right. Yep.
I mean, that's
Yep.
kind of crazy, you know, how they
That
play
was
off
definitely
each other.
crazy. Yeah.
And you know, we just had to trust our instincts and say, you know, let's do this. I mean, I hope it'll work. We got really lucky. I mean, we got really, really lucky, you know, to have these two actors. You guys are great, and you work great together, you know. So
Well, Drew makes it easy. You guys do too. I'll never forget in the casting after the self-tape, Vicky, you asked me, you said, so how do you feel about the high seas?
Right.
And I was like, well, yeah, they're there. I was like, I mean, barring a catastrophe, I mean, they should come out. But I just remember thinking like, man, this stuff is high. And
Well,
they
there
might-
was some discussion about maybe we'll lower the key, maybe we'll change a note here or there. You know, that was definitely in the discussion because it intimidated some of the actors auditioning. You know,
I loved it. I was like, bring it on.
It fits your voice like a glove. I
Yeah.
mean, and I was thankful that you were like the guy doing it. I mean, I feel like if the roles were reversed, I would be, you know, ooh, maybe. But like you totally had
Thank
it.
you,
Like,
Drew.
it was great.
You were both extraordinary. I mean, really, we haven't really talked about that yet, but both of you were just gave phenomenal performances. It's not just that the parts are high, the parts are rangy. So even if you were to drop them, then they're going to get too low. I mean, it's a tough singing. And I remember saying to Michael, we had this conversation, Michael Holland, I was like, who is going to play these roles? Like, there's no one that can do this.
Right,
And then
like
the two of you,
and a high C
Yeah.
at points. Yeah.
yeah, the two of you, perfect in every way. It really was sort of a revelation watching your performances. So we've not met in person yet, but I thanked you privately, but publicly, let me say, really,
Thank you.
the life that you brought to this in every moment, musically and otherwise, bravo, really. It was fantastic.
Thank you, Scott.
Really.
Thank you, Michael.
Material
Thank you.
also to put it into perspective for your audience, from beginning to end, this was about 4 weeks. You know, from first day of casting to the production that you're watching, 4 weeks. It's crazy. And 3 of those weeks were 20 hours a week on Zoom, on Jam Kazam. And out of those 20, we'd be lucky if we got 12 real hours of rehearsing. I mean, because of the technology and such. So it was just incredible. The fact that we're all sitting here talking about it blows my mind. So.
Why was it so important to bring this to life during COVID? Why do it now?
So I'll speak to that. My wife and I actually came into to New York, to New Jersey for this reading we were going to have. It was going to be a tune-up reading for a 3-week run that was going to happen in December. And it was the weekend that New York shut down. And I was on this high that we were finally at the last step before the actual production was going to happen. And we drove home from New York to Ohio, and I was so depressed. And the funny thing is, we didn't really know what was going to happen with COVID. So we actually rescheduled this tune-up reading for May, thinking, okay, we'll wait 4 or 5 weeks, we'll have it. And we were still locked in for 3 weeks in December. And of course, the world turned upside down. And when we started kicking around the idea of filming it without an audience in a COVID safe way, I will tell you that Michael and Frank Liccato, who's the artistic director for Hudson Theater Works, weren't wild about the idea. They gave me a bunch of lectures about we're into live theater, we don't do videos. So I was anxious to get this thing up and produced because I've been working on it for 9.5, 10 years. And and when the world shut down, I didn't know if it was going to be another year or 2 years or 3 years or how long it was going to be. We figured out a way to make it work. and you got to take advantage of the opportunities when they're there. As you know, the entertainment business is very fickle, and when you have that opportunity, you might as well grab it, because I didn't want to say after the fact I should have done that. And that's one of the things my brother did. I mean, he would pitch his songs to record producers all the time. 99 out of 100 people would say no, but you wind up with a record with Smokey Robinson or Tony Orlando or The Fifth Dimension or Michael Jackson or 3 with Michael Jackson. You got to keep on pushing it. And in this industry, you got to take advantage of the opportunities when they're there, because if you don't, you're not going to be successful. So, and this is, and it's fun. This is a song, Living My Dream, that Scott talked about. This is living my dream. I'm doing it.
I got to say, I know, how fortunate I felt to do this production during the season of life that we're in, that everyone's experiencing when everything is shut down, and to have the opportunity to work in this creative capacity was such a gift. So I'm thankful that you pushed forward to get this done. And of course, could have chosen, I'm sure, any number of people, but I'm thankful that you chose me and Drew, and just the gift that it provided for us together to work together and to work with the entire creative team was just a huge blessing for me personally.
I want to say, from an audience perspective, I was very grateful to watch. I felt like it was very important to watch this show during COVID, because it's a story about family and the connection between two brothers during a time when we weren't really allowed to connect. And that really stood out to me. So I thank you guys for bringing that story to us. We're just about to wrap up, but before we do, I want to just go around again and give everybody an opportunity to give last thoughts, encourage those who haven't seen it yet to get their tickets and watch it. So I'll start this time with where we ended, and we'll go backwards and end with Steve. So Drew, any last thoughts?
I just want everyone to watch Ellie and me and to see this wonderful relationship between Elliot and Steven. Brothers are so important, and their relationship is a type of relationship that only few are lucky, not few, but many don't have that opportunity to see or feel a brother's relationship. And this is the perfect way to enjoy their humor, their struggles. It really makes you feel, I feel very warm when I think of Elliot and me and how the feelings that it invokes. And I think it's a great production, and I want everyone to go see it. So enjoy.
I would say that you definitely want to see this Tale of Two Brothers, and you've got to be there to see how we live our dream.
Victoria?
Is it me? Okay. What he said. And I just wanted to say that we, sometimes when you're working on a show, things don't necessarily jibe with this particular production, with everyone involved. Everyone was so lovely. Everybody was so great to work with. Everybody was so talented. And it was just, it was just a pleasure and a joy, the whole process. And I think we tell a really good story. And it's a story that I think a lot of people will connect with and appreciate.
Michael Bias?
Yeah. All right, I'm going to tell you the end so you don't have to see it. But no, it was a joy. I feel like I'm jumping on the bandwagon here, but it's a love fest here right now. But it really was, and it really, what Eric said about a gift to be able to work during that time, and And it's just great to be able to share that with all of you. And I hope you all do get to see it and tell your friends and your neighbors and whatever. Thank you. Thank you for listening tonight.
Michael Holland.
Yeah, so I'm glad I got a chance to pipe in, because we've talked a lot about how Eric and Drew really bring the story to life, and that's all true. But from my perspective, working in the Mad Scientist Lab, making charts, all by myself, to hear them so beautifully played and music directed by Vicky, it's such a big deal, and it really means a lot. And I didn't get to thank you for it, so I want to thank you in front of everybody else. This story, I've been familiar with this story for quite some time, and it's been really thrilling to see it actually brought to life by people who know what they're doing. It's really, really awesome. So I'm thrilled to have been a part of it. I think you all are going to enjoy it, and yeah, thanks for watching.
Yeah. What he said. And I just want to stress again, the performances of Drew and Eric, and the direction of Michael and Victoria, it's something. I mean, I wrote it and I was like, wow, like it took me by surprise. And we keep saying it's a story of two brothers, and it is, but really it's a love story. It's a real love story. And I think that's why it's so powerful. And just, I would encourage you to look at it with those eyes and see how it unfolds.
I think that from my perspective, because I get a lot of feedback and have gotten a lot of feedback over the 10 years as this thing has been developed. If you have a sibling, if you have kids, if you have parents where you've seen them interact, or a close friend, you're going to have a connection with this show. There are scenes in there going to make you think about a relationship you have with somebody, and make you think about what's really important in life. And you're going to laugh, and you're going to cry, and you're going to be really touched. And I think that's, as Scott said, it's a love story. And so if you've ever been in love and had that relationship with anybody, you're going to relate to Elliot and me. And I hope you really enjoyed the show, and I'd love to hear your feedback.
Well, thank you all again for being with us this evening. I know that we're all over the country, so I know it's getting late for some of you guys. So thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone who joined us on YouTube Live. And this video will remain up so people can see it. Send your friends over to learn about this show, and buy tickets at lagunaplayhouse.com. Everyone, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, Laguna Playhouse.
Thanks.